Hi there everybody! Today I'm going to give you my personal review of Joanna Gaines' very first cookbook, Magnolia Table. I have been cooking and baking my way through this book for the past 30 days, so I think I have a good handle on it, and I can't wait to share with you guys what I've learned, both about cooking and myself, and also share my top 10 recipes that you should try if you have this book. Can't wait for you to join me. I'm Jen. I'm so glad you're here. This channel is all about living on less. I'm from Ontario, Canada. I have 6 children, and among the things I love to do most is home cooking and home baking. During the spring of 2020, things have been a little crazy in our world, a little crazy in our home, and I really wanted to find some way that I could kind of distract myself from what was going on, give myself a constructive project to do that I was also going to enjoy. So my mom had given me Magnolia Table for Christmas, and I still had not tried very many recipes from it. And I decided to challenge myself. I decided to cook from her cookbook every single day for 30 days with new recipes that I'd never tried before. So the very first thing I want to do for you today is to share with you some pictures of my favorite recipes that I made. If you don't follow me on Instagram, feel free, the link is below, or on Facebook or whatever type of social media you use, because that's where I was posting the pictures from these meals along the way. So I'm going to share with you my top 10. I'm also going to share with you after that which recipes we didn't like so much and I probably won't cook again. And then finally, I want to disclose some pretty important things I feel that I learned about myself while going through this journey. I want to talk about that at the very end, so make sure you stick around till the very end of this video. Okay, so my top 10, so these are all recipes that are amazing, and I'm gonna go from 10 all the way down to 1 being my very favorite recipe from the entire book. So number 10, my entire family agreed with this, was her chocolate chip cookies. Now I have made a lot of different chocolate chip cookie recipes in my day, and I thought I kind of tasted all of the variations. But Joanna's there was something special about them because they actually rose a lot more than most homemade chocolate chip cookies do, and I found they just tasted really good that way. They were just very, very moist on the inside instead of so crunchy like a lot of times you can get with a homemade cookie. And we ended up using them as the outside of our s'mores for a backyard bonfire one night, and they worked perfectly for this. Number 9 was another dessert, and that was her lemon pie. Oh, this was so good and really easy to make. I've made a lot of lemon meringue pie for my family because that's what they enjoy, but when we made this, I think we all agreed it was just out of this world. It was next level, and it was easier than a traditional lemon meringue pie is to make. Number 8, we made this past Father's Day for breakfast. My kids and I made it together, and it was her overnight French toast casserole. So it's called overnight because you cut up French bread and then you mix your eggs and spices and cream and everything and soak the bread overnight. And I think there's some sugar in there as well. And then before you put it in the oven, you top it with like brown sugar, pecans, butter, and then you bake it. It was so delicious, way better than traditional French toast is. And we served it with berries and whipped cream and some maple syrup, some powdered sugar. So good, so delicious. I will definitely make this again and again. I might just bring it to some Christmas brunches coming up. It was that good. Number 7 was called Becky's Mac and Cheese. This was in the side dish area of the cookbook, but this could definitely be a main dish. I don't even remember how many types of cheese were in this dish, but it was so rich, so delicious. It was worth that extra cost of buying a whole bunch of different types of gourmet cheeses to create it. It's not maybe something I could afford to cook every single week, but it's definitely something I will cook for special occasions, or just when we really need that comfort food. Number 6 was the Gaines Brothers burgers. I cannot even tell you, definitely the best. I'm not necessarily a burger person, but this was the best burger I have ever tasted. First of all, there was a lot of meat in the burger, but I think the thing that made them so good was that the buns, you mixed with herb and garlic and butter and brushed the buns and then toasted them. So the buns themselves were like, it was like having garlic bread as the buns of your burger. And then on the burger, there was a special topping she has created for it called bacon drip jam. Just the name itself, you can probably imagine how good it is. So it had like bacon drip jam, Swiss cheese, arugula, tomato, and this garlic bread bun. Just out of this world. They're huge servings, so I think this is where maybe our Canadian serving sizes versus American serving sizes, or Texas serving sizes in the case of Joanna Gaines, comes into play. When she says in her cookbook, serve 6, you can probably guarantee it will serve like 8 to 10. Like these burgers were almost impossible for one person to eat, so I would recommend making them and planning on maybe cutting them in half and sharing them with somebody. But so delicious. Number 5 was her deviled eggs. We make deviled eggs a lot at our house, and we just do kind of the standard. You put mayo, salt and pepper, maybe a bit of onion powder, and sprinkle with paprika, the very classic deviled egg. And I don't know why I've never tried gourmet versions before, but this was so good. One of the things I liked the most about it was that it called for not only mayo in the filling, but also dill pickle relish. So you mixed in dill pickle relish and a bunch of different herbs and spices into the actual egg part, and then you topped it with candied bacon, which you candied your bacon ahead of time with brown sugar and cooked it, and chives. They were so good. So I'm going to be making these ones definitely many more times in the future. Best deviled eggs I have ever had. Number 4 was the sheet pan nachos. Now, I picked this recipe on a night where I felt like we were already really busy that day, and I was looking through the book and I was like, nachos, that's a perfect one. Nachos are easy to make. Well, it was really easy to make, but I will say they tasted way better than my nachos ever do. First of all, buying gourmet nacho chips really makes a difference when there's different flavors in there. But some of the toppings she had, I don't usually have with nachos, like mashed avocado, olives, a variety of different cheeses. It called for seasoned ground beef as well. But what really made the difference for me was the limes. Mexico, you know what you're doing with serving limes with Mexican cooking. And I don't know why, but in Canada, maybe we just don't use limes as often in our cooking. And seriously, having a lime wedge on the side of those nachos and drizzling it with lime juice, the flavor was incredible. It was so good. Number 3, okay, we're getting down to the top 3 here, the very best of the best. Number 3 was the very first thing I made from her cookbook. And it was a bacon bottom chicken and wild rice casserole. This was a little tricky to follow because she doesn't actually have a picture of it in her cookbook, so I wasn't sure if I was doing it correctly, but by the taste of it at the end, I feel like I probably was following it correctly. It was rich, delicious. I've never had a casserole before where you put bacon slices on the bottom. It just adds an extra level of flavor to the whole thing. And my kids just went crazy for it. So when I can find a recipe that all of my kids absolutely love, that's when I know it's a keeper and it's gonna be in my roster forever. Number 2 was her bruschetta. Now, bruschetta seems to me like it'd be a really simple dish, and I've made it before. We have it at family gatherings quite often. I've had it in restaurants before. I've had it in Italy and Greece before on my travels. Never have I had one that tasted as good as this bruschetta did. Well, she calls for you to actually soak both sides of the French bread in melted garlic butter and toast them first, and then put your toppings on. And when we usually make it, I don't know if it's just a shortcut I use, but we've often made it just with like kind of an Italian dressing and herbs and spices with the tomatoes. But she calls for a lot of balsamic in her recipe. Just so delicious. So delicious. and the type of cheeses she calls for. Everything about this bruschetta was melt in your mouth. We had a few pieces left that I heated up for breakfast the next morning, and it was almost better the next day than it was the day before. So if you have this book, definitely try out her bruschetta recipe. And number one, what was my very favorite recipe in this entire book? Well, this might surprise you. It was probably one of the more simple recipes in the book, or what looks like a very simple recipe. Not complicated, but it was her white cheddar bisque. It was so good. Very rich, very filling, but there was something about the combination of flavors that just in my mouth, it was just incredible. This white cheddar bisque was incredible. That's the only word I have for it. It was very easy to make this recipe and the best tasting in the whole book, so it got my number one spot. Okay, what were our least favorite recipes in the book? To tell you the truth, there weren't that many that were our least favorite. We pretty much liked them all. But the ones that I might not make again, first of all, were her cinnamon squares. Number one, they were a lot of work. Number two, I'm not sure if I made them correctly or was following the recipe correctly. I triple checked that I did get all the ingredients right, but something about the dough just didn't work out correctly. It wasn't rising correctly, and I know that my yeast was good because I tested it before. So they just had, instead of a cinnamon bun taste, they kind of had more of a dry biscuit taste to them, so they weren't my favorite, and because it was so labor intensive to make them, I probably won't make them again. The other one that I loved, but almost none of my kids liked, only one of my daughters liked it, was the bow tie pasta recipe. So I love a good creamy pasta recipe, but I think for this one, it wasn't necessarily kid friendly because there were a lot of things in there my kids aren't used to, like artichoke hearts, sun-dried tomatoes, and kale. Now I wanted to show you for a sec, so here's the book. I already showed it to you. I wanted to just mention that the spine of this book, it's not spiral, so it's really hard to keep open. So when I was making recipes, I was having to like put things on it to keep it open while I was reading the recipes. That I found a little bit difficult, so I actually splurged and I went on Amazon and I bought a nice bamboo recipe holder. It just looks like this, and like this at the back. And I'll just show you how it works with this particular book. But I thought, man, like why didn't I buy this sooner? Because I do have other recipe books that aren't spiral bound that are like this as well. And they're always just kind of a pain to keep open. So the way this works is there's just little levers on the front that hold it in place. And you can see it'll just hold it up. It's also great as an iPad stand or something like that. So I'm actually going to put links for my Amazon affiliates down below for both that recipe book stand, because I absolutely love it. I've been so impressed with it for the price. And I'm also going to put links to both this recipe book and another one that Joanna has come out with, because I think I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna try this experiment again. I'm not sure if I'll do it anytime soon. It might be next year before I get to it, but let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to try this again. You'd be interested to hear what I say about her next book. Okay, so what did I learn about myself during this challenge? What I think I learned about myself is that I'm more capable in the kitchen than I thought I was. So I learned how to make some new things I've never done before, and they turned out. Maybe it's just the way Joanna writes it in the book, in that it's really easy to follow, but I made a béarnaise sauce for the first time, for example. I made a souffle for the first time, and these were all sort of French foods that I thought I could not do, and that I needed to go to basically chef school to figure out how to do it myself, but it wasn't as hard as I thought, and it gave me that extra little boost of confidence to say, Jen, you're not just a homemaker, stay-at-home mom who doesn't know much. You can do hard things too. And I already alluded to this in the past, but this challenge did meet the goal I had to distract myself from what was going on in the world. It was just so nice to turn off the news, turn off what was going on outside, and get in the kitchen, be there with my kids, baking, cooking some of these recipes, and doing things we've never done before. Because it uses a different part of your brain than when you're cooking or baking something that you've done 100 times before and you're just kind of on autopilot. It also made our family gathering time at the table so much more enjoyable because we were trying different things that were really delicious, and it wasn't just the same old mom's cooking. Some things I also learned while following this book is that it is not cheap to cook like Joanna Gaines. The whole point of my channel is to focus on less is more and taking our least and making the most out of it, living on less, and her recipes call for a lot of things that are expensive. These aren't cheap meals to make. And I definitely blew the food budget a couple weeks while I was doing this. You know what? Joanna Gaines, she runs an empire. Of course, she can afford to cook expensive foods and use the best quality, most expensive ingredients. And that's awesome. Maybe someday you and I will be in that place too, and we won't have to be thinking about budgets when we are cooking our food. But for right now, I am thinking about budget, so it's just a little disclaimer I wanted to put out there. The other thing that kept going through my mind as I was cooking her meals was, how is Joanna Gaines so skinny? She is this beautiful model shape. She's so trim. How? I don't understand. If this is how she cooks and if these are her recipes, how is she so trim? I'm sure it's a combination of things. She's probably very active, but I would imagine her metabolism isn't quite the same as my metabolism is. So the way I got around this is when I was cooking her meals, I tended to take a very small serving size. So for the desserts, maybe I would take half a piece of pie when I was trying it, or half a piece of the cake. If it was a casserole, I definitely wasn't filling a bowl or half my plate with it. We were just doing small serving sizes to get around the fact that everything had butter and heavy cream and eggs and a ton of cheese in it. And you know what? Because everything was so rich, it didn't really bother me to reduce the serving size because it tasted so good and it was so filling as it was. So there you go. There are my views, my opinions, my review of Magnolia Table Cookbook. I hope you enjoyed this. If you haven't subscribed to my channel and you're interested in seeing more videos kind of like this, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, a like, because it helps the channel. It helps my videos to be viewed more and put out into the world more often. And don't forget those shopping links below if that interests you. Can't wait to see you guys in the next video. For the least, this is Jen.